Hi, I'm Norman Liss, and the name of the program is The Way to Go. I invite you to join me each week as we explore places to go and things to do. Today we are going to the waterfront in Yonkers. There's a magnificent new mural on 3 buildings. You think that they actually are buildings there, but they take us into the past. It's part of the waterfront development project of Yonkers, and they've been done by an internationally known muralist, Richard Haas. And Richard Haas is my guest today. Richard, I'm delighted that you came back. We talked several years ago, but now with this mural in Yonkers, we have another reason to talk about it and some of your other work. But you create these magnificent tableaus on buildings and public buildings. What sort of vision is required in order to create these? They look so real.
Well, when I first started, of course, I just saw facades, and I was drawing them, and I was, of course, photographing them, and I was ultimately making prints of them. But as I looked more and more and sort of built up an encyclopedia of architecture out there that fascinated me, I realized that a building can be a lot more than that. A building can, really be a monument unto itself. Mm-hmm. If you go into France and you're going down the Rue Saint-Michel, suddenly as you go across the Seine, there's this building that's really a fountain, that's really a monument to St. Louis. And you get the Trevi fountain in Italy as a perfect example of that. But that kind of thing is what started me in several projects ago, trying to transform a building into something like a monument.
The first one you did was 1974, actually, in Soho, wasn't it?
Yes, and that was what I would call my didactic phase. I mean, I simply took the cast iron facade in the front and transferred it to the side, repeating all the windows, but incorporating 2 real ones, and that, was kind of a chore.
And a cat.
And put a cat in a window that was slightly open, yes.
I love to take people to Soho and say you're in for a surprise and show them the building and say it's not real. And show them how you've done that, because, of course, it's still there.
It's fading.
Fading. And it's an interesting point. Not everything that you've done lasts forever, does it? Some of your most interesting facades are going or gone.
Well, yes. That's partly a sign of age, I guess, and partly a sign of the ephemeral nature of the work itself. I mean, it's really paint on buildings. It's not buildings per se, right. And we know buildings themselves have a shelf life, while the painted facade on the side of a building has an even more precarious one. So
one of the most notable to me that you did in this book about you, let's start with this one, which is in New York, mm-hmm. and which is quite interesting because this is really down near the South Street Seaport, isn't it?
Well, if you can see the photograph, you can see that it's right behind the bridge, and that was the kind of locus for the idea.
This is the side of a Con Edison building that's actually flat, isn't it?
The building, as I always like to say, is not a building. It doesn't have a roof. It's really kind of a fake building, and it's in the first place meant to match the buildings adjacent to it, which were of the great period of the early 19th century, the kind of late Georgian period. And so this building was built just to hide those generators that had to feed the electricity to all those buildings. So what I did is I just took that as a departure point and made it into a more plausible, I like that word, plausible, sort of repetition of what that area was like, in its earlier period.
But you also, in your painting, can see through the wall to the Brooklyn Bridge.
Sure. I mean,
but you also can see the real Brooklyn Bridge over the top of it.
Yeah, well, it depends on where you're standing. I mean, if you're up real close, all you got is this. If you start backing up and you're not hit by a car or a fish truck, then you'll start to see the bridge come up behind you.
It's really amazing. What I was aiming for was to find the photograph in Miami. So let's talk about that while I look through the book.
I think that's one's actually in this book here.
It's very interesting. Now, this is the Fontainebleau Hotel, of course. Mm-hmm. And what is it? The smaller photo at the bottom there actually shows what the wall looked like before you attacked it.
Well, that facade, is at the end of Collins Avenue, which is the great avenue of Miami Beach, it running north and south. And it kind of makes a jog to the left there and goes around the Fontainebleau Hotel, around 44th Street, I think it is. And for whatever reason, that facade was put up there somewhere in the early 50s, and there were like 40 windows in it, tiny little windows. Well, when I was first shown it, I said, well, there's not a lot I can do. He said, well, we can get rid of the windows. Why is that? I said, because it's nothing there behind it but hallways. Mm-hmm. So once they got rid of the windows, I had a very nice surface to work with, and then I decided to take this and turn it really into what I think was a triumphal arch, a kind of arc de triomphe, in an deco drag style.
And seeing through the arch is?
And you look through it and you see the building, which is actually directly behind there and is probably one of the greatest buildings in the Miami Beach history, and that's the Fontainebleau Hotel by Morris Lapidus.
It's interesting that when I mention this to people, what happens is if they've been to Miami Beach, they know that mural.
I know. It's kind of the trademark mural, but it's going. They're now planning to tear that building down and build a 40-story building adjacent to the site. So there's no way they say they can preserve the building because half of the building will be gone, in effect.
Now, how do you feel about that? I mean, you talk about that one. There's another one that's going in Milwaukee, is it? Or
well, in Madison one got
Wisconsin?
Covered over in a rather humorous way by Frank Lloyd Wright Civic Center, which I depicted in the windows of the one behind it before its time. And there was no intention at building the Frank Lloyd Wright building at that time. I was remembering the fact that the Frank Lloyd Wright building had never been built on that site.
And you have a connection to Frank Lloyd Wright.
And I had a very direct connection to that.
Which is?
Well, I was working at Taliesin as a youngster, and age 18 and 19, and I remember going into Mr. Wright's studio in 1955 and seeing the drawings for the Madison Civic Center beautifully displayed on his table. And having remembered that, and it was part of the reason for doing that mural in the first place. But little did I know that, post-mortem, he would revisit the site and take away my mural.
There's another one of your murals at the exit the Lincoln Tunnel on 42nd Street, which is fading very badly.
Yes, it is. We were trying to get some money to redo that, but there wasn't enough interest, and that's always a problem,
You're part
the
of
second round.
You're part of history.
In some places, like I went over to Germany last year and I redid my mural there in Munich because there was a civic interest in preserving that mural. It's now considered a landmark.
When you say redid the mural, of course you do it on canvas?
No, I do. The murals, the walls are actually painted directly on the surface with a paint that I discovered actually when I was in Munich the first time in 1978. Mm-hmm. And it's a silicate paint that actually gets bonded right into the cement. And it doesn't fade, it doesn't go away. It's a good material. It's life lasting.
How do you start? What goes into it? And we're going to get into some details of what's actually taking place in Yonkers in a few moments. But how do you get into it? They're so realistic. The term is trompe-l'oeil, fool the eye, mm-hmm. And it's so realistic. It's very hard when you look at any of your work to realize that it's not really three-dimensional.
Well.
Is that hard to do?
Not. I don't think it's hard to do because it's really the sort of the bare bone, rock bottom training that most artists in the Western cultures have had since at least the Renaissance, if not before. Realism, as we know it in the West, is sort of based on this kind of painting, which was to reach such believability that you should reach in and touch it. And there are, almost rules and that you can grab onto. So that part I find, fairly straightforward.
That's the easy part. What's the hard part?
The hard part is ideas. And I think it was Aaron Copeland, one of our Westchester residents of the past, who once said they said, "What's the hardest thing, sir, in doing your symphony?" And he says, "The contract." In other words, just getting to the project in the first place and all that has to lead up to it and all the difficulties that are involved. But, passing that point, of course, then it's all about, what are you going to actually do with this particular wall now that you've got it?
The project here in Yonkers, for example, the gateway to the waterfront.
Mm-hmm.
This is the cover of a catalog or a brochure that was done in conjunction with an exhibit. Which,
yes, at Art on Main, which I want to mention.
On Main. Now, these are three buildings, and they depict some of the history of Yonkers, actually, don't they?
Yes, there are three facades on the corner. One crosses the street. Two of them are on the southwest corner, and they sort of form a right angle to each other and almost a park.
Main Street and Riverdale Avenue.
Main and Riverdale Avenue.
Right.
And it's that our area that, is what used to be called Getty Square as it extends down toward the river. And, of course, the emphasis now is to do something with the area from Riverdale down toward the river.
So where does it start? I mean, with a lot of research, you've got a tremendous amount in there. You've got the Indian heritage, you've got Henry Hudson in there, you've got trolley cars, Dutch colonial. There's so much in there. You've even got a little bit of Hello Dolly in there.
Well, that's a big part of Yonkers history, too, in its way. I mean, I wanted to load it, and I knew that I couldn't tell the whole story. I mean, Yonkers is a 400-year story at this point, even since, the Anglos came. And, of course, there was a prehistory as well. That's very important. So I wanted to even tell about that. But I did sort of bring it from the beginnings of time as much as I could to about 1900. I feel that I left the 20th century for later or some other venture.
It has to be seen. It must be seen to be believed. I know I've seen it 3 or 4 times. I've taken people there.
I was surprised last night when I drove by. I mean, I hadn't seen it at night quite that way.
I surprise people. I don't tell them what they're going to see. And a lot of times, depending on the time of day and how the light is, they don't realize that it's a painting.
Well, I think there's, that aspect is okay, but then there's a point where they cross the bridge and they realize what it is, and then they can enjoy it on another level. And I think both things are part of the experience,
I know you do exteriors, great, but you do a lot of interiors as well. With the exteriors, thousands, if not millions, of people are passing by and seeing your work, wherever they are, whether they be in the United States or in Europe or Australia, whatever they may be. Is it daunting to know that an artist paints and it's hung in a museum or it's in someone's home, but you have such vast audiences?
Well, I'm probably another extension of the greatest artist that ever lived, anonymous. Most of them don't know who did this thing. They just kind of take it in for what it is, They don't connect it necessarily to a body of work,
But how do you feel about it? I mean, you're putting yourself on public display, and whether or not they know that it's Richard Haas. As I knew long before I knew that you lived in Yonkers and you were active with the Hudson River Museum and active with Main Street, Art on Main Street. I didn't know all of this, but I knew Richard Haas's work because I'm an architectural fan, and I've seen what you've done in Boston and New York and other places. I've seen your book long before I met you. So you're not anonymous to me, and maybe you won't be anonymous to as many people after they see this program and hear about what you do. But you've been doing this for a long, long time,
right.
And you are on public display and for vast numbers of people.
Well, I think just like any performance or performer, I mean, each act or each play, if that you want to call this work here in Yonkers, is kind of a play of its own, right?
It's a performance.
Yeah,
it's an interesting term.
And it doesn't have to sort of stand totally by itself. not connected to anything else. And I feel that's very important, part of it. I also feel that it has to reach to a very broad spectrum of audience because, when you're out on the street, your audience is just an endless array of individuals, each with their own experience. And so that is part of what I call my job, to have something that can reach as broad an audience as possible.
It's beyond saying this is great art. It's art that people can identify with.
And maybe learn. I mean, that too, I feel, is another aspect. They can take it in and do with it whatever they want, process it, but come back to it, revisit it, and eventually wonder why is that Ike Meyer trolley there? Well, why is there a trolley barn a block away? What was that trolley system all about? What did that have
to be used for something commercially? I know that's been empty for a long, long time. The real barn, which is still there.
Yes, it is. Possibly going to be a cinema.
A lot of things are happening in Yonkers, and I know you live there, and you're proud of a lot of it. You've been active in so many things, as we discussed before. A lot of things are happening in Yonkers, and that waterfront development is just tremendous. What about Art on Main Street? You are involved with that.
Well, that was our organization that was started, I think, probably Barbara Siegel and Vinnie Bagwell and Irv McManus and several other people in the community, along with myself and my wife, Catherine, were instrumental in 3 or 4 years back trying to get an actual presence and interest in art in the downtown area, especially of Yonkers, and to have some kind of a place where things could be seen, activities could occur, that kind of thing.
And what has it resulted in?
Well, there have been several good things. I mean, they have their fall galas, down on the waterfront, and then Art on Main has always been a part of that. There was a sculpture symposium about a year ago, and the sculptures that resulted from that are now on display on the waterfront next to the pier, the new pier, new old pier that's been fixed.
Ella Fitzgerald sculpture down near the railroad station, isn't there?
That was done by Vinnie Bagwell about a year and a half ago, and that's I gotten a lot of very good attention, and I hope gets more when that building becomes useful again.
I do want to remind our viewers that we're talking today with Richard Haas, the muralist, the painter, the artist, who's responsible for the gateway to the waterfront, this wonderful 3-building mural, which is located in the Yonkers at the intersection of Main Street and Riverdale Avenue. It's something very worthwhile to see. And Richard Haas, who I have admired his work on buildings for many, many years, since I saw the first one in the 1970s in Soho, is talking to us about that and his work and everything else that he does. You talked about interiors. You have about 125 different paintings that are existing, but a lot of them are interiors. How does it work with an interior? Where are they, and what are they involved?
Well, there's too many to begin to pinpoint, but it started really before I even did my exteriors. I had a loft, and one time a wall opened up. Somebody came in and removed a few of my precious possessions, like TVs and things, and I covered the wall up, and I put a door there, painted a door there, and then I continued to work around the room until I had really done a sort of trompe-l'oeil interior to my space down in Soho. And that led to several other private commissions of interiors, and that went on for several years. And then it began to become more of a way of dealing with the public spaces on the insides of buildings, like a lobby. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I'm, as we speak, and say, working on 3 or 4 of those in my studio.
Where are some of them now?
Well, there are 2 federal courthouses, one in West Virginia, one in Georgia, and then a county courthouse in Sarasota that I'm working on right now.
In the New York area?
In New York, there's the New York Public Library periodical room. 14 murals were painted there in 1980. Philip Morris has a public eating, or not public, but for the workers in the building, an eating facility, which I did a mural surrounding the space.
Do they all depict a view of something or something historical? What is the...
Each one's a story of its own. The one in the New York public library, for instance, is the periodical room, so I depicted the history of periodical publishing houses in New York, each of them in its own niche with a painted surround.
Are they old tremploi? The old
I wouldn't know if that one would be really tremploi, but it has elements of tremploi in it. It's more of a series of paintings, murals, painted into their niches. Then in the one in Philip Morris, for instance, they're in a sub-basement, so I painted what it would feel like if you're at the top of the building and seeing all of New York in a panorama around the space. So it's really a way of destroying the sub-basement feeling.
I started by asking you about the vision. You look at the space, you talk to the sponsor, the client, and what are you trying to achieve, and then you come up with the concept. That's the hard part, isn't it? That's the vision.
Is that what that former president called the vision thing? Yeah, and sometimes you have more than 2 or 3 solutions to a problem, and sometimes you even show those to the client and say, it could be this, it could be that. Usually I already kind of know which way I want to go with it, but I'm sometimes torn with 1 or 2 ideas that might present themselves in one spot.
Well, then you have to do both of them.
Peel it away. I've done that too.
The concept now, when you have it and you do it, how do you do the original work, which is then, of course, put on the side of the building? Do you work very small, or how do you...
Well, I do a lot of work in my studio to lead up, and I even have help in that sometimes, because some of these boards, that I do, which are to scale, sometimes they're 1/2 inch to a foot, sometimes they're 1/4, 3/16.
Sections, each section?
Sometimes entire walls, like the thing you're looking at in this booklet right here is actually a painting of the mural. And that then is done as perfect as possible to that scale, turned over to the painters, and they then transfer that up to outline drawings, full scale.
So you may not have a full painting of what it's going to be like, or more in sections that can be done. In other words, do the originals exist?
Yes, I have. I have the original drawings of these. The one depicted.
For example, here.
Yes, what is depicted here is actually the original drawing, and then when that little vignette is the actual painting on the facade. So you can see what the drawing looks like, and also you can see how it changes or gets transferred as it becomes a physical painting on the wall.
We talk about the 3-dimensional effect. It's very, very hard, even here, but certainly on that wall, not to realize that these bay windows or oriels are... What's the difference between a bay window and an oriel? I never have been able to figure that out.
I don't know either. I'm not even sure what they call this thing I invented for this space. It's kind of a curved copper series of bays that take you into a very complicated space, because the building had a lot of ins and outs. And when I have to deal with a lot of ins and outs, with a lot of openings and windows and whatever, I have to come up with something that's fairly inventive to just make the thing work.
You photograph the blank wall and
I have drawings of it, measured drawings of it, photographs of it, everything I can get, yes.
So it's architectural as well.
Very architectural, and not at all unrelated to what an architect does. Yeah. I mean, that, for instance, what you're looking at is the one of the, I think, favorite parts of that particular project. And there I sort of attach a facade to a facade. It backs up right up to this building, but feels like it's coming out of that building at the same time. And, of course, there's a door opening, which even gives you another feeling, and there's even somebody in there. We won't talk about him. But anyway, there's a lot going on there. And then I call that my Dutch mural. You see, I've got the Henry Hudson on one side and the Dutch trade on the other, so it's kind of like a Dutch mural. But it's also a building, and it's a very familiar-looking building. Why is that building familiar? Because I took pieces of it off the City Hall, bit by bit, sort of deconstructed pieces from the City Hall, and invented this building around that style.
I see what you mean when you say that the actual painting is the easy part. It's these conceptual things that really count and that really matter.
So many decisions, yeah.
You started this project in July, and it was dedicated in the beginning of November. Is that accurate? Or were you working on it long before that?
No, I started this project about 5 years ago.
Really?
And then it went through stops and starts and during various events and non-events and politics and whatever. But eventually, the idea, I think, probably went through about 15 or 16 changes in the first year or so. But I was pretty well set on it about 2.5, 3 years ago.
So what is meant when it says that it was started in July? The actual execution of it.
The
started
actual painting on the wall started.
painting on the wall
Yeah.
started in July.
We wanted a long, dry season, and we hoped, May, June, July, August is always your best time.
The people who do the work, who put it up on the wall, they're specialists in this sort of work?
Yes, they're mostly painters like myself, artists. Some of them have an artist background, some don't. Most of them have something like an art background, though. But they also have a sort of journeyman background as mural painters.
Is there enough work for them? I mean, how many people are doing what you're doing? You would think?
I guess you could say that it's spawned an industry in this country, not just what I do, but what other people have done. And when they're not doing what I would call this kind of creative project, they're possibly painting clouds on the walls of a casino in Atlantic City or up here in Connecticut. Who knows? But there are all kinds of other things they do.
You say that you mentioned that there's a special type of paint that you have found works and lasts and really does very, very well. The quality of lasting, of course, is very, very important. And so, actually, although you may think that you're anonymous, these are really not only monuments for the area, but monuments to you. And I think that's a wonderful part about it. And that's the wonderful part about the work that you do. And I'm so delighted that you could come here today and tell us and give us the insight. And thank you very, very much. It was a real pleasure having you here.
Well,
My guest today is Richard Haas, a muralist who's done so many wonderful wall murals in different parts of the world, and particularly the new one in Yonkers down at the waterfront. Go see it. Go see it several times. Take people there. It's something worthwhile. I'm Norman Liss. The name of this program is The Way to Go. And until next time, enjoy yourself.